Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 401 Access Denied. We're really excited to be here again, and we've got another fantastic guest and fun topic for you to enjoy today, and hopefully get, one is we always want to entertain you, but also to educate you, and that's really the goal of the podcast itself. So, my name is Joseph Carson, Chief Security Scientist at Thycotic, and I am really excited to again be with my co-host here, Mike. You want to take it off and give us a little bit of update and what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, Mike Gruen, VP of Engineering and CISO here at Cybrary. We're going to be talking about cyber offensive with Ondrej. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Joe and Mike, pleasure to have me here on the call. And Joe, the relationship goes for years, so
absolutely
really privileged to be here. I run digital forensic unit at LIFARS. I'm also one of the founders of the company, and we focus primarily on digital forensic and incident response, forensic investigations. We have a unit that performs offensive type of services like a red team and more human skill penetration tests. We have advisory unit. We also conduct managed services more in almost like a cyber 911 ambulance type of managed service, like a level 3 and up. And we also have R&D. So we develop our own tools. For example, look us on a GitHub. We have tools for warfare that actually detects nation state in the memory of the computer evidence.
Fantastic. I'm just you're based in New York, but where would you your operations and activities, who would you provide services to? Is it in the US specifically, or is it globally? Or where would you work?
It's globally, but most of our clients, because we are in New York, are in North America. We have a few clients in Europe. Some of our clients are, of course, international. We do have offices in Europe and India because we have to support 24/7, like a cyber 911 line is 24/7.
Fantastic. So, and really, when I think about, one is there's incident response is one thing. It's really, but responding quickly and gathering evidence and really making sure to understand about how the attackers got in. What was what would you recommend? When somebody hits that button and they have an incident, what would you recommend? Where would you start? What's the first things? What's the most important things for a victim in order to prepare and start thinking about what do they need to deal with when they're in the middle of an incident?
Joe, I always recommend a step 0. Step 0 is you call your recruiter who last time got you the job where you are, right? And you update your resume. And you also go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. Look, most of us have been this for 10, 20 years, right? And we see what happens. Reality is, today, a cyber attack, it can be as bad as a cyber cancer. You can't predict, none of us can predict how you're going to get sick tomorrow. Of course, all of us also believe that you're going to get sick in life. You need a doctor at some point. So became hacked today, became one of life's certainties. Life is a breach. That's the ecosystem you live in. You like it or don't like it, cyber warfare applies to you, like everyone. If you, Joe, and Mike don't have a $500 in bank account, be happy to send you a check. But if you do, great news for you. You are a target. If you look at it, three common targets are nation state, cyber extortion, and business email compromise. Applies today to everyone. So where would you really start? I mean, you really, truly have to start with understanding, why am I a target?
Yeah. Understanding about what your risks are, why what is your exposure, what's the value that you have. I think that really, I always say to organizations, sometimes look at yourself from the mindset of a hacker, and really kind of look at it from the outside in, because that will really identify the risks and exposures that you might have. So it's really kind of critical to make sure that you understand about that yes, absolutely, everyone is a target. Everyone can be a victim. In most cases, we always have to assume that we're already breached. And it's really important to be looking for it. This is really critical to make sure that you're always looking. You're always, it always reminds me, I remember, it was quite a few years ago. It was one thing that always reminded me, and it's one thing you just mentioned about being unpredictable. I remember I was in the middle of we were doing a major OS upgrade. thousands of operating systems are going to be, I think it was XP to maybe Windows 8 to Windows 10. It's a major upgrade. And ultimately what happened was that we had planned everything, we prepared all of the images, all the tasks, deployment, the systems are all ready. And then all of a sudden, we'd done the testing, we'd done the preparation, and we're now about to deploy the updates. And all of a sudden, we're thinking about, let's just go and take a look. We're about to hit the go deploy button. And then we said, let's take a step back, let's do something, let's go and double check everything. We just didn't, something in our gut said, don't hit the button yet. And we went and we checked. And what actually happened was, it was actually already compromised. An attacker gained access, and we were actually about to deploy a basically piece of malicious software through our update. And ultimately, they've been watching, they've been understanding about what our projects were, what the plans were, and they've been hiding themselves. And it was basically our unpredictable moment where they didn't realize that we were going to go and do that final check, which wasn't in the schedule. It wasn't planned. And it was really, for me, it was like that being unpredictable sometimes is one of your best capabilities, is that if you can catch attackers by surprise, then it's the best way sometimes to detect them, to find them on the networks. So unpredictable for me is definitely one of the things that all organizations should put into practice. It should be something that we should do, is be unpredictable, because it makes it harder for the attackers to stay hidden. It will force them sometimes to make mistakes and be uncovered. So Ondrej, what would how would you recommend organizations to go, and how, what should they be looking for in the networks to try and find, or to be unpredictable, or to find attackers lurking in the networks? What indicators or what things should they be trying to check for?
Joe, I really like how you put the unpredictable into some systematic approach, because looking back to my life, I was just unpredictable and create a lot of chaos compared to you.
Sometimes.
But it truly doing something outside of the norm and outside of normal implementation. I had a very similar scenario where a company deployed very expensive 7 digits air gap solution from a provider. And I'm not going to name the provider because it's not important. And that solution was breached. The main reason why it was breached is because they put predictable implementation in the solution. And the threat actor literally just followed the manual, how the air gap is going to get connected and disconnected, and what they need to do. And they asked us, so what would make a difference? And we said, exactly, if you've done something outside of the box. A third thing in it, the threat actor could not read from a manual, could not find in your documentation, could not deal with, and only you know of. And it's basically, let's say, a third-party system that you integrate through API. It's documented, let's say, on the identity management side, but not in a backup solution. It's only referenced. And the identity group actually holds all the documentation. It's a separate group at your large organization. The threat actor would have a significant challenge to do that. So
absolutely,
I would say the same page, we have to have a corporate visibility. You have to create a corporate invisibility. Like almost you can appear at any point and every point of time. And yes, we call it threat hunting, we call whatever, like form of an audit, but create those snapshots. If you look at the plane industry, like an airline industry, created really good safety check for planes. Why? Because they do a lot ad hoc, exactly what you said. And we just don't do that in the cybersecurity. We don't probe, we don't question. Everyone is busy. Whenever we come to organization, we ask them, what do you do on a daily basis? I said, you understand. I have 40 products, and I became IT help desk, IT information security help desk for these products. Because all what my executive management is doing is convincing me that all these tools are going to save me. Right? And it's, in a specialized unit in the military, we don't believe the gun's going to save you. We believe that using that gun, being the ability to use a sniper gun, is the talent. Because everyone can buy the sniper gun, but not everyone can shoot 2 miles and kill the target. It's a skill set. I mean, not saying it's a dead extreme, but also don't be naive that having the gun makes you a sniper. No, it doesn't. Right? And
absolutely,
we see this almost like a ninja warrior approach that when we walk into an organization that you don't understand, we've got everything on the planet. Look at my budget. 2 years later, We've got some small problem here. We got a little bit of help. What happened? Right? So dealing with something that you can't expect. And yes, the hacking has maybe low probability. Nation state, 4 to 6%.
Yeah.
Very low, sure. But it's deadly. When it happens, right, you either going to be digitally naked with all executives on all around the internet, or you're going to be digitally dead. And as one of the generals, Koropko, from the Russian GRU unit, which is cyber intelligence unit that exposed the most of their secret, says, look, our number goal is look Americans stupid and digitally die. And you know what's the beauty? When you kill a person by bullet, they are in the graveyard. Digitally, I can make you die 4 times a year. It's going to be very painful. And I can repeat that every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. It's literally is that basically with the different cyber attacks, and it's been going on for a long time. It's becoming, I guess the media is picking it up more. You're getting more visibility into it. They're becoming more catastrophic, more impactful. So, it's clear that you're absolutely right, is that, basically those attacks, it's exposing multiple times. It's repeating and repeating. I've seen companies, that not just become the victim of a ransomware one time, but multiple times. And it's continuous. And if they don't learn from, the lessons and the mistakes and, what's been done in the past, and they don't make fundamental changes, they're not going to stop it in the future. So I think, this is something that we have to really address, and it really gets into, really around, one is the resiliency side of things, how to become more resilient. So, what's from your perspective into what can we do to deter? What's the deterrent for those types of scenarios? What would be the resiliency? What would you recommend?
I would say it's a very systematic approach in cybersecurity that you need to take, right? It's not like one thing's going to save you. Like when you look at, for example, ransomware attack, isolation is the key. Don't allow lateral movement, right? Why? Because look at my computer here, right? I'm connected where I am. My computer is compromised. You have to assume at some point someone's going to hop on my computer. Yep. It's just the reality. Like that virus that you're going to get, or it's a cold or cancer, or whatever pandemic you're going to get, we're all going to be exposed to it. Are these tools on my computer ready to deal with it? Maybe they are. Maybe they're going to fail. Maybe they're partially going to detect. Maybe some visibility. So some visibility is in here, right? Because you don't feel well, right? So you do have some visibility. You might just not understand what that is. So you do have to question that. So very important in the cyber resilience is that how much truly you can create a systematic approach that isolates, creates zero trust, does some type of monitoring, does give you some visibility, does give you these warnings, these oracles, right? It's Cassandras around the road. And they might not have all the answers, but they have clues, right? You might get these clues, but you have to figure out. If the point where you start believing that the artificial intelligence and robots and machine learning is going to solve everything for us, what you see actually is happening is the threat actors who are good in nation state, they actually now starting in the MITRE framework, isolating the executions. Every time they do, it's just only one thing they execute. Okay, I'm executing this, then PowerShell, then VB, then I'm going to inject, then I'm going to library, then library downloads, right? And it's like 10 things that do happen now in a kill chain. And now you have an EDR product. Oh, this thing, 40%. Oh, this thing's 40%. It's 40%. But if you put them as a chain together, as a kill chain, you just got killed.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no product right now that's going to do that for you, right? So let's get also not be foolish that threat actors also don't understand that they isolate every, like almost like every infection on that chain for you too. And they schedule this in a way that your EDR solution or whatever you have on the network, but you still have that 40%. And if someone looking at this dashboard and sees those 40%, and at the end, he sees that, guys, this is nation state, right? You still need that human talent to actually pull that for you in that cyber resiliency approach. So having almost verticals at every, like a building security, and I think we've done very well. Building security, same approach in the cyber, where don't put a lot of money in one basket, but you have to diversify, and you always have to assume that, look, Joe, I like you, you're really trustworthy guy, but you have no access nowhere at the company, okay? You're going to be requesting access tomorrow. well, I don't really work like that. I mean, Ondrej, like, this is like a punishment to me. I said, no, because if someone hacks your computer, and we have to assume someone's going to hack your computer, right? You have to ask for access. And you know what? You have to take that phone and you have to get authentication token to the data repository. It's not going to be mapped to your computer anymore, because when you get ransomware, right, it's going to encrypt everything. Well, you don't understand. You don't have a good cyber hygiene. I wash my cyber hands 3 times a day. It doesn't matter. None of these excuses do matter, because we go outside and we still get cold. We go outside and we still get sick, right? So being cyber sick should not be a way of us defending ourselves or take it personal. You know what? It was 10 years ago, you would tell me, Ondrej, you got hacked. I would take it personal. I had to deal with my own issues, not to take personally that I've done everything I could, and I get hacked. I wake up every day in the morning and I'm thinking, is Joe and Mike in my computer? Oh, no, not two. Right? Who is in my computer? And that's my first 10, 15 minutes. Almost like you wake up in the morning and you're asking yourself, am I going to die today? Or what would that be that I die today? My meditation moment when I go and run in a park. And I think good learning lesson here is what happened in cyber extortion and ransomware. Around 10 years ago, the few groups declare that they're going to go after the cyber insurance brokers' data. And no one kind of really believed this. Like, people say, oh, this is nonsense. Why does it make sense? And now, look, if there is someone who's a cyber criminal, you think they're really that stupid? They do all that cyber crime. They don't get arrested. They're that silly. It makes perfect sense. Why don't you get a list from a competitive broker who is creating competitive analysis, the accounts he wants to get from another broker with the cyber insurance limits and also premiums. Imagine that list, having a hands that this broker, your competitor, has the accounts you want to go after. Come on, everyone in technology business is done it when you work for a tech company, looking at the competitors, and try to get a competitor list, okay? It's the game we played for years. And now we have a group who openly admit it. We don't even hack companies who have no insurance. Why? Because why would they be hacking someone who can't pay? How silly that would be, right? So I think what we learn also in a cyber resilience is try to limit footprint of sharing what your enterprise risk strategies actually are. And if the enterprise risk strategy for some companies is only buy cyber insurance, you're really done by it. Your game is over.
Yeah, because you're putting your value out there.
The first record that's going to be disclosed to threat actors who are, by the way, quite sophisticated. And if you look also at the recent momentum, a few of them posted that Elon Musk, thank you for bumping our earnings 5 times. We are in a hiring mode. Do you want to join us? They should ask Elon Musk to join the criminal ransomware rings, because from 10 million, I'll have 50. Imagine 40 million to hire people now to ransomware, right? That's a pretty good chunk of money, of revenue, right? That's a lot of hire power right now in the ransomware market. So how do you deal with that momentum? And the answer is truly systematic approach, zero trust, look at all the components that you have, try to figure out how you're going to gain the visibility on the endpoint, on the network, on your perimeter. If your perimeter is dead, put things in the cloud. Like, for example, one of our strategies is to work heavily in the Microsoft cloud, because they do much better security as we as a small company can do. And then lock everything, right? Meaning that I'm here on my network, I connect my computer, I only have access to the Microsoft cloud and no one else's computer, and maybe a few printers. Okay, I'm isolated. My computer is lonely in office. Doesn't talk to anyone, can't do any lateral movement, can't go Microsoft cloud. And if you go to Microsoft cloud and someone encrypts the data, right, we just revert it. If you take the data out of cloud, you have to compromise my account, because most of the data has IRM, like a digital right management, right? Like a music. You take someone takes the file, it's gone, right? So sure, they can take a snapshot while they're on a computer, or they can create screenshots and take some data, probably grab my email because some of the stuff. But reality is that these layers are very important.
Yeah, it makes it more difficult. It forces the attackers to take more risks. That's ultimately what we're trying to achieve, is make them take more risks so they create more noise and become more visible. And I absolutely agree. I mean, for me, one of the kind of clear messages that I find is important is the principle of least privilege. it's so fundamental, is that you should start with zero, and you have to build up basically your verification, your trust, your access, and it should be basically only for the things that you need at that moment in time. It should be time based. And I love that what you're mentioning is that you try to keep your connections as much as limited as possible. So even for myself, when I go to anywhere in public, I basically seldom, if even anytime, connect to public Wi-Fi. It's always either through my own VPN connection, my mobile hotspot. I limit all the connectivity that I do. I even get into the point where systematically have put into my disk rotation. I take backups of the disks, so I've got online backup. And then at some point in time, usually in a month or every 3 months, I rotate the disks. That disk goes into basically an archive and won't come out until I ever need it. So fundamentally, I've always got a point in time where I can go back to. I've always got data. So for me, I think what I try to do is I look at, yes, at some point in time, I might become a victim of ransomware. It's fundamentally possible, but I want to do everything I possibly can to limit the ability that they have to encrypt all the data, because not all my drives are concurrently connected all the time. And also that if they ever do encrypt the data, that I've got a disk I can just pull out of the store, plug it back in, and be up and running, and not have to become, thinking even about paying it, which I would definitely never pay it. And I've seen people, I get calls all the time. Ondrej, you're probably the same as you hear from victims quite regularly. And I basically, was talking to a person just a few weeks ago who became the victim of ransomware and had lost 30 years of their digital life. 30 years. And the attackers basically, gained access. And it was the week before enabled remote at desktop on his machine, 1 week before, and only took a week for them to gain access to his desktop, and then also his NAS device, and all his data encrypted, gone of over 30 years. And you sit and look at that, and they're thinking about paying. They start considering about, well, it's my life. It's it's all the kids and families and history pictures. So what you end up doing is that we have to educate, and we have to make sure that those types of actions don't happen. And I've seen businesses as well, not just individuals that happening to. I've seen businesses lose a year of data, where ultimately they've lost 1 year of value because, fortunately enough, when they did a migration, that migration forced the backup. And the backup was from an older version of software which had the data. But they lost the basically cumulative data for an entire year of their business. And of course, then they had to go, they spent probably a month or so going through the paper, and then having, they had paper receipts and paper documentation, paper notes that they had to go and recreate that again. So, the victims out there are real. I don't know what type, Ondrej, what type of victims that you see? Are you seeing organizations regularly, becoming victims, whether it being nation state type of attacks, or whether it being business email compromise, where somebody's transferred money, and hopefully the bank can stop it, depending on what type of transaction it is, and also ransomware victims. For me, those seem to be the most common areas. You sometimes get the data theft or the competitive one that you mentioned. Which instances do you see the most often, and which ones are the most impactful?
Yeah. So we kind of play the role, I would say, this mid-sized market vertical, like companies between maybe 100 million to 20 billion in revenue. But we have a good relationship with the Mandians, with Spielberg, and some of the big shops. They see definitely like a lot of the nation state. We see some, maybe not at the same level as they see. But in mid-sized business, I would say we have a really healthy chunk in our cyber emergency room. And it's not like some of them are more targeted. Let's say healthcare is more targeted because of, in the US, Medicaid data can be abused for ordering pills through various automated systems. So medical records are really good way to go. By the way, Joe, I don't get any of those pills from any sort of side. But look, if someone is really on narcotics and wants to get like really good approved FDA for narcotics, right, instead of street whatever drugs, I mean, this is the way to go. I mean, you've got FDA approved stuff that really puts you high in the space, right into the cloud, real cloud, with these people. So I can see how that has a huge value, and Medicaid in Europe is like a $4 billion fraud a year. That's like $4 billion. That's a lot of pills, right?
That is a lot
in a state like in Europe. So that's I would say that's probably what we had, maybe close to 30%, 40% with literally healthcare. and going after healthcare data, try to monetize the data, try to monetize it into it. Financial, yes, primarily. I don't think the last 2 years we had maybe 2-3 companies who did not have a cyber insurance. And I think it was just honestly an error on the threat actors to, they hire interns too, and those interns do mess up from time to time, right? So they misplace the company. The company calls XYZ, and there's also XYZ Incorporated. So XYZ is small, but XYZ Incorporated is real target, right? I go sometimes to research a stock and end up being the wrong stock, right? So it happens to all of us. Sometimes these threat actors end up hack the wrong company instead of the company they really wanted to hack. So we've seen some of those instances too, but primarily it's really at that point it's not a vertical, it's not who they are. It's a mid-sized business. They think they can get in through the web vulnerabilities. Some spear phishing, but lately we've seen the spear phishing being more of a decoy for forensic companies, meaning that they come through, let's say, web vulnerability, but they still drop you spear phishing campaigns that people click on, and they put company in the rabbit hole. There was a large data center that got hacked in December. There's a very famous forensic firm out of Chicago that worked on it. They put them in a rabbit hole in the wrong direction for almost a month, but they realized the problem was somewhere else. So even threat actors, be careful. They know how to play the tricks right now. And the more sophisticated threat actor create this rabbit hole for forensic firms, and like, let's say you have a domain controller right now, and they touch the domain controller 4 or 5 different ways with different compromised corporate admin credentials. The same way. And now, instead of used to be one system that made a lot of movement, now we have a 6 system that made a lot of movement. Of course, they didn't. There's probably 2 or 3 of them that are more relevant than the other, but now they have to analyze 4 or 6. All right, so they slowly down on that forensic investigation with those victims. Mid-size is really good target for threat actors because the insurance premiums are healthy. We had highest ransom last year, I think $35 or $45 million in that vertical. So it's pretty good when insurance pays $35 million for you. And I would say it all goes to 7 figures very quickly. And that's what you saw. The escalation to 7 figures really happened because the money is there to pay. OFAC right now can be a problem, right? The OFAC licensing in the US and paying the ransomware rings can be an issue. But I would think, sure, if you look at the large firms, nation states is going to continue being an issue, right? So sure, that's fair. But the mid-size is going to get slaughtered more and more just because there's not enough cooperations, international cooperation for the law enforcement is hard to do internationally. And then that mid-size vertical has a really healthy data right now and really healthy money to pay.
Yeah, I know that, I've seen a lot from Europol doing a lot of work in takedowns of the botnets and a lot of, some of the ransomware gangs. So there's a lot of work going on continuously, but it gets into the main focus is at some of the bigger, larger, multinational kind of, let's say, criminal organizations. So, and very rarely it's not consistent. There's so many gangs out there that's probably 1 in 500 that you ever get seen taken down. It's a really kind of small number compared to what's happening. One of the questions I've got for you, Ondrej, as well, is that when you get into I've seen some challenges into when it gets into digital evidence gathering. So for me, it's always that kind of challenging area. And I've seen cases where I remember it goes back to quite a few years ago now. And it was that when we got a warrant in order to, go and collect computer systems from a internet cafe, right? So there's a warrant that went out. And the problem is that from basically when you send that warrant, it's local law enforcement goes in and basically does the warrant, collects the computer equipment. However, they basically collected just computers. And it was a misunderstanding that it should have also included, network devices and switches and anything else. And there was an internet cafe, so they also had games consoles like PlayStations and stuff. And they only went in and collected basically just computers because there was a misunderstanding of what was technical equipment. Do you find, I don't know, kind of this was in a specific country where the legal and warrants had not been modernized yet. Is that improving? Are you seeing collaboration between, let's say, digital forensics and local law enforcement being able to collect evidence and gathering it without contaminating it? How improved is that today?
I think that, and look, I don't want to say I'm a radical here, But I tell the way I see it, we're coming with these regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and sanctions, right, for companies. But we are not coming with improvement to help data collections and cybercrime to start in the first place. Like higher penalties, easier process to subpoena. We usually do complete opposite. Like, look, I also have Apple devices, but look what's really happening. The technology vendors decide if you can decrypt the device or not. Right now, there is an article right now that NYPD has 3 rooms of Apple iPhones and Apple equipment from child pedophile cases. What that tells you, right? If you're a child pedophile, you use the devices that no one can get even into it. So it's not even like, how do you collect from something that you don't have access anymore? And the person, even if you put the gun to his head, says, I don't know. Right? And he doesn't have a fingerprint, he has a pin or something else, and he's not going to cooperate, period. I mean, he knows that unless you find some other evidence, you're not going to get it. And you're not going to get it from the Apple. You're not going to get it from any other way, right? You're not going to get into his account, and you're pretty much done, right? So you're pretty much done. He's not backing up in the cloud, so Apple serving subpoena to Apple is not going to work. He has everything on his device that's secure, and unless you buy this exploit for $1 million for every iPhone you have in the stack at the police station, you're pretty much cooked at that point of a time. And that's what I see. I see that criminals heavily rely on that. Number one, there are only few governments who are aggressive in prosecution. Look at the APT-10, respectfully.
Yeah.
Only United States serves subpoena. Most of the European countries, Asian countries have been slaughtered by APT-10. It was first really eye-opener in a supply chain type of attack, but MSP providers 11 years ago got all hacked across the globe, okay? 3,000 warriors, whatever, work on this mission. That was much bigger than false SolarWinds. How many countries really wanted to serve subpoena to other nations, to these one big nations in Asia, right? No, it's like you only, like these forces where you had the powers after the World War II and they said, we're going to do the right thing. Those powers are gone. You might have one evil country who's serving Department of Justice subpoenas. Even other countries in other civilized Western world will not contribute. Because they don't want to create maybe enemies. There's some trade issues, right? Like, first, let's be honest to all each other and says, okay, I'm a small country, but I'm going to serve subpoena too.
Yeah,
this is not right.
I agree. The only way forward. What I was really happy at the recent White House statement regarding the funding, the new cyber funding that they came out with. I was really happy because it was, for me, there was actually some the language in there about basically the funding was that the need for cooperation and transparency and collaboration. And that for me was actually positive, because what I find is that in this environment, we're always dealing cybercrime. I don't know how much you're finding cybercrime being cross-border. I find it, a lot of it.
Most of it.
It's basically probably 90% plus is cross-border, meaning that you're now having to deal with international legal, frameworks. And then you get into jurisdictions and legal and difference and so forth. And I find that the only way we can really treat this as basically a collaborative, as working together, multiple countries working to make sure that there's fewer places to provide safe havens for cyber criminals. The more we work together, the more we collaborate, the more we are transparent, the more we hold certain countries accountable for providing safe havens for criminals, then that's the only way we can actually make some movement forward. Because if we're working individually as single countries trying to deal with it as a single country, it's not going to be possible. It's a fundamentally, it's a no-go direction. No single country today can win a cyber war. And it means that we must act as a collaborative, as a collection. So I was really happy at the statements, the reinforcement that the US now will work as a collective, as together, cooperation. I think that's a key message. So I agree to your point, is that that absolutely we have to start holding the countries accountable for the crimes that they do, or the crimes that their citizens are conducting from within their borders. There has to be some element, the ability to do action, whether it being sanctions, which has been the most common method. But I think we must go further. I think it must kind of really get into stepping up and really doing something more actionable to really, because otherwise we're going to continue seeing ransomware. We're going to see it increase. We're going to see more companies become victims. We're going to see more supply chain attacks. We're going to be seeing more nation states starting to, let's say, shame or embarrass countries from doing cyber attacks. I think that's going to continue unless there's some type of global cooperation working together moving forward.
Well, yeah, the legal framework has to be fully supported. Like pretty much everyone has to get on board that, yes, I'm going to prosecute this. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to look, I came from Czechoslovakia. We don't even have, our court does not accept electronic evidence, ESI, electronic historical information, as the primary evidence. Okay, so how do you deal with that? The countries wherever I came from, that it's like there's a joke. The guy goes to Bronx Zoo from former Czechoslovakia and watching giraffe all day, right? And get a beer and vodka. Then gets watching giraffe, goes for beer and vodka, completely drunk at the end of the day, completely drunk. Two security guards are throwing the guy out of the Bronx Zoo. He turns to them and says, "And you know what, guys? That giraffe doesn't exist." Right? That's a mindset you're dealing with. You're watching all day long. You are getting into euphoria. But at the end of the day, it doesn't exist. Okay? So how do you convince these countries and nations that, yeah, it does exist. It's real. If you reinforce the legal framework, like, what do you mean? Like, you can't prosecute people stealing intellectual property? That's a minor offense in your country? Really? Like, people really taking a code, like in the US, you get 15 years. And when you're telling me in your country it gets a penalty of 5,000 euro and tells, can you please not do that again? It's kind of not nice.
Yeah, it's a warning. It's a slap in the wrist. I mean, here in Estonia, that was one of the, when I came to Estonia 2002, almost, which is a long time ago, that ultimately it was a realization for me. Estonia realized, actually back in 2000, when Estonia set out its goal to become a digital society, digital nation, was that paper had to be equal to digital. And so your digital signature, everything you do in a digital world is actually accountable. It's actually, it can be, classified equal to that on paper. I think the only thing you can't do online here in Estonia is get married or divorced. The only two things you can't do. Everything else you can do digitally.
Oh, Slovakia doesn't accept digital signature.
Which is fundamental.
Doesn't exist.
It's a way that we have to do. That's the future. So countries that want to, let's say, innovate and become much more of a digital nation, that's the only way forward.
And I have even better for you. If you are prime minister and you sign a contract and it has your signature, now it's classified because your signature is classified. How many millions, Joe, did you say you needed?
Oh, that's... So it's Ondrej, it's fantastic having you on, and it's really, intriguing conversation. I really always enjoy listening to you talk and some of your insights. You have a huge amount of experience, and fantastic. Mike, any thoughts or anything that you would like to share with the audience, or what you've been taking away from the conversation?
For those that don't remember, I am actually here. It's been fascinating to listen to. I think we covered a lot of topics. I think, a lot of times we sort of get sucked into the very pessimistic, negative side of things. This episode, no exclusion to that. And I think, there's the what we can do in terms of the international framework. We've talked about that in the past, but I think trying to maybe end a little bit more on some of the positive side of like what individuals should be doing or could be doing, what small businesses could be doing. Because I think one of the reasons, as we were talking about, why are the sort of mid-sized market, why is that so lucrative for cyber criminals? It's because probably, my guess, is that you have the high insurance premiums and there's all the money there, but not the investment on the cyber security side of things. And so it's the ratio of money to be made versus the ease of the target is much higher than if you start going after more what would be a higher value target probably also has much more sophisticated systems, and therefore it's harder and maybe not worth the effort, and you have to be nation state. So thinking about that mid-market and small market and individuals, like what would you say are good things that we should be doing on a regular basis to sort of help protect us, so we can sort of maybe end a little bit on a more positive note than the nihilistic, we're all screwed.
So what helps us is the hybrid model. I think stop believe that you are your own cyber mechanic, you're your own cyber therapist, you're your own cyber doctor. Because ultimately in IT, people believe that we can do any of it. If you go to, for example, a hospital, none of us wants to do open heart surgery. None of us wants to do open brain surgery. And we realize that these people at a hospital being trained to do that. But let's stop in the denial. I think what really help us as a company and also mid-sized market is create a hybrid ecosystem, meaning that we do have a partners. Like an example, my partner is Microsoft Cloud. Why? Because yes, I believe the Microsoft can detect the threat actor, not just the threat actor, coming into the tenant much better than I do. If I create the same infrastructure in my premise here, I can't guard it the same way they can. And I'm paying the fraction for the money, but that hybrid model right now, that I don't hosting that internally, and I don't have Active Directory at all on premise. Nothing. Doesn't exist. Okay? No Active Directory on premise. Maybe some companies can operate. They have to do the hybrid more, right? So do the hybrid. Try to separate the domains. What you have in the cloud, what you have here. But truly, I would say, don't try to do it on your own, right? Do not. You're not fixing car on your own. Don't think the cyber is something you're gonna fix. Find a hybrid ecosystem and take, like you said, you have a limited budget. Take the budget and say, okay, if I buy this from this partner and I paid him that much money, what kind of security I'm gonna get versus I'm gonna build everything internally. How much is it gonna cost me? What am I really saving? And what is my risk? Okay, so the saving is 20%, but if I'm gonna get hacked, oh, I'm done.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe the 20% of the saving is not worth it to go here to a cloud provider or to go someone who knows what he's doing. And I see dramatic shift on MSSP side. The companies that used to completely try to manage the SOCs internally now have, yes, hybrid SOC. What it means, they augment their SOC with the outside providers. Meaning that we have our own SOC team, so we actually use our own SOC team. But if we didn't have it for the clients, we would have to probably do the same. Guess what? Because it's a different view. It's almost like you're giving different opinion from someone, and it's not that expensive anymore to actually do that, to get that different opinion. And then also find someone like a Joe, right? Like someone who used to be a cyber professional, now is a cyber therapist, right? And sign up for a therapy session that are expensive. I'm sure they're more expensive than cyber professional consultations, maybe like a double, because now you need a therapy versus a cyber professional consultation. But sign up for those sessions twice a year and go and ask them, listen, I've got this network. Do you think I'm healthy? I'm cyber healthy. What else would you do? I mean, you've seen it all. You've seen being compromised. You're expert on identity management. You're expert on the provisioning, expert in less privilege, like how the people are really gaining the access. What's happening in your vertical? Like, how is that really working? You said the access, for me, access, well, that's an important, right? Isolation, that's an important component of that. Then you talk to someone at a network forensic. You talk to someone, right? The same way you seek specialists, let's say 4 or 5 specialists in a year, find those individuals. It's not, trust me, it's not that expensive. That hour and a half, 2 hours is worth of your time. And the way it should be really ran, we have a few companies where the board actually does it. The board calls for the CISO to have a specialist to talk to them about the issues. And then I say, this is a quarter when we solving network visibility, we signing the identity and access management, and we want to have a legal and compliance presentation. These 3 areas. And you guys are going to bring 3 experts to look on what you're doing, and don't take it personal. Right? Again, goes back to that personal moment. Oh, I'm holding this. Don't ask me questions. All right.
I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing. Why someone has to come in and almost like audit me and ask me questions? No, it's like, let's be real, right? Like everyone has a different level of experience. Bring them in and be open. You have to be open. Like the same way many of us move out in a career because we were open to critique, right? And I always liked the people who actually were not laughing and said, Ondrej, you're great. I said, you really suck, man. Like this is not good. And I knew these people are honest to me.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, you want the honesty. You want the basically, the direct, honest feedback. And that's one thing that's great about Estonia. Everyone is very direct and honest. They will tell you what is on their mind. And I think it's really important. I think that's where definitely leaders surround themselves with people who actually critique and provide continuous feedback. People who they will learn from. They want to make sure that they're continually learning. So, Ondrej, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. As the hybrid approach, I love it. I think because one of the things for me is that most organizations cannot hire the experts and specialists in all of those areas. It's impossible to maintain resources for every one of those areas, whether it being incident response, malware, reverse engineering, to attribution, to recovery, to to SOC analysts, to looking at log correlations, to doing identity and access. You won't be able to find one person that does all of it, and it'll be difficult to find individuals to maintain all of that.
Well,
So
the other
absolutely.
problem is, again, if you're trying to, let's say you were trying to hire all those people, it's not a full-time job for all of them all the time at your company. It gets back to it's the same, as my background in software engineering. We've built so much on top of other things. It's what's core to our business. Let's make that in-house, and then look to leverage whatever SaaS or third parties or contractors or whatever for all of these other things. And it gets into, we have this great ecosystem, and cybersecurity is a really cooperative space. I love it, right? Everybody wants to help everybody. We recognize that by working together, we're better together. And so I think there's all that opportunity, and encourage people to reach out, get the right professionals, ask for help, because you can't do it all internally. You can't do it yourself.
Yeah. Ask for help.
If you look at the military, right, and you look at the countries who are good at this, right? So you have local police station. Let's say here in New York, we have NYPD. So that's a big privilege, because that's not a classical police. There's a helicopter, boats, so I don't know, submarine, whatever they have, right? So it's like really big budget, right? But they're dealing with a different type of criminals. But you go to outside to Westchester Country, you have a normal police department. They have normal guns, they sure they have some automatic rifles in the closet. But then you have federal law enforcement. You have a state enforcement, right, ran by the DA offices, and you have the FBI, you have a Secret Service, you have a federal mandate over the state, right? You move one more level up. On top of that, you also have the U.S. Marshal Office, right? So we have multiple layers here of this extreme structure. Then you have the offensive forces and military, and even in the military, you go through, right, the various ranks. You have a Marines, you have Air Force, you have a Naval Development Unit, development groups, and then you get a specialized forces. Now, if someone at that local station thinking that he's a special forces, he's making a big mistake. Okay?
Absolutely. I don't
think they do, by the way. Right. But in technology, that's exactly what it is. You have a local cyber cop who thinks he's a special operations cyber cop. Okay? And he thinks he covers all of those. And the answer is no, you don't. Because if you've never been a sugar cookie, you actually have to drop in the ocean and go in the sand and then stay like that for a day and be truly in a misery, right? You actually never experience what that being SWAT team at a cyber actually means. So the hybrid model, even when you see how the specialized units who deal with, I would say, quite complex human and war conflict type of issues, and also society issues, right, from law enforcement to the offensive missions and how they structure. Don't think that you can create all of that at your company. And it's not something you should do. Why do you think Westchester County doesn't have a snipers?
They don't, because they don't need to. It's not something that happens so often.
Maybe they don't know that. Maybe they hire snipers.
So, but
I grew up not far from Westchester. I don't know if they have snipers, but
but I think I love that analogy. I think it's really important. That's why all organizations focus on your business, and for the things that's not your core business, get help, get partners, get experts, get people, and relationships with other organizations that can help you fill those roles and needs. Do not try to do it all yourself. And I love, Ondrej, that the county sheriff thinking they're a specialist, and it's something that I think that's where we really have to get the realization. I think all of us, who have been in that position, that's how we have to look for the experts, to provide us that need and that resources. So I love that area. So I think, we're coming on the end. So I think it's fantastic, Ondrej, having you on the show. I think this has been really exciting and interesting. And definitely going to be, for the audience, is going to be something that they'll probably listen to multiple times. There's so much content value in here. It's fantastic. Thank you very much for being on. Mike, again, always is awesome having you on the co-host. So for the audience, it's a pleasure having Ondrej. If you're interested in learning more about digital forensics or incident response and Ondrej's experts, or you need a specialist to talk to, definitely reach out to Ondrej. We'll make sure that Ondrej will get your contacts available to the audience where they need to, and how they get in contact and get more information from you. For the audience, it's a pleasure as always. Join us every 2 weeks for the 401 Access Tonight podcast. Stay safe, stay educated, keep learning, and we enjoy having you listen to the show. All the best and bye.